ألا شك بأن الله أعطى تفضلا وأن الذي أعطاه أعطوك مسجلا إن حديث الذوق فيه بشارة للرائين لمن للذائقين توسلا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف المرسلين وعلى صحبه أجمعين ومن اتبع لسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فأقول لكم يا أيها الإخوة والأخوات السلام عليكم, brothers and sisters. I greet you with the greeting of Islam, which is to say, may the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon you. After that, inshallah, we invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send his blessings and his peace upon his messenger Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib al-Hashimi al-Qurashi al-Arabi, and upon his companions and upon his family and upon all those who seek assistance through his guidance until the day of judgment. Amma ba'd fa'aqul lakum. Now, as to what proceeds, inshallah, I say to you, we are continuing with the second part of our lessons into Al-Qawaid al-Fiqhiya by Sheikh Rahman ibn Nasir al-Sa'idi al-Najdi. This is his book into the Maxims of jurisprudence. We said that Qawaid is not the same as Usul in this particular instance, although linguistically they pretty much have the same meaning. Usul meaning the foundation of something, but it comes from the asl of a tree. Whereas the qaida is the foundation of something, but it can be the qaida of a building or of a structure. Ala kulli hal, when they're used with respects to the Islamic funun, with the Islamic sciences, the usul refers to the process of istidlal, of how to derive evidences, and how to be able to use evidences properly from the sources of the Quran and the Sunnah. And the qiyas of the ulama and the different sources, you understand? And the ijma of the ulama as well. Whereas the qawaid al-fiqhiyya, I should say, are actually one of the sources in usul al-fiqh. You'll see that maybe within the Maliki madhab, there'll be the 11th or 12th source, right? After you've exhausted the nas al-Quran, the fahm al-Quran, the tanbih al-Quran, the dalil al-Quran, then the fahm al-hadith, the nas al-dalil, so the nas al-hadith, the fahmul hadith, the tanbihul hadith, the dalilul hadith, and then so forth and so forth, right? Ala kulli hal, then al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya would also be something that you can take as a source, because sometimes a situation might come and what occurs is that there's no specific nas on it, but it can relate back to the principles that we have in al-qawaid. And the qawaid, they all come from the statements of the prophets themselves, the prophet himself. And the qawaid are a proof of the blessings of the speech of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, he says, "Innama utitu bi jawami al-kalam." He says that I was given the comprehensive speech. You understand? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is someone that if he can speak in a 20-word sentence, that 20-word sentence, we can make an entire book out of it. We can derive entire legal canon out of it, as the ulama have done. And that legal canon will not be frivolous; it'll be sound. You understand? Ala kulli hal, in the first iteration, the author was just making dua, and he introduced the fact that he had collected different principles from previous ulama, and he made dua for the people that are reading this book to be guided, and saying that the best of knowledge is that which will remove filth from you and which will remove doubt from you. And he made dua also for the ulama that came before him that compiled these qawaid. Inshallah. Ala kulli hal, we'll continue inshallah, beginning with the 11th line. He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and he says in this first qaida that he's touching on, it's the ulama, they say, al-umuru bimaqasidiha, that affairs are according to their intent or to their aim. You know, or it comes from the hadith likewise, innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. He says, وَالنِّيَّةُ شَرْطٌ لِسَائِرِ الْعَمَلِ بِهَا الصَّلَاحُ وَالْفَسَادُ لِلْعَمَلِ. He says that the intention is the condition. The intention of an act is a condition, لِسَائِرِ الْعَمَلِ, for the remainder of the action. He says, بِهَا الصَّلَاحُ وَالْفَسَادُ لِلْعَمَلِ. He said, through the intention is what you'll have rectification and soundness and acceptance of a deed, وَالْفَسَادُ, or you'll have the corruption, the invalidity, or the uselessness of a particular deed. A simple example, you can have a niyyah bil-sharia or a niyyah bil-haqiqah. This is just a side point. When the hypocrites came to pray, some of them might have the niyyah that I'm going to pray, an Islamically valid niyyah. But the niyyah in haqiqah is not sound because they're not praying for the purpose of praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They might have the intention, okay, I'm going to come, I'm going to pray asr, but they're praying for the purpose of showing off the people. And most of them, they don't even have the niyyah for the purpose of praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, strictly from a fiqh perspective, just from a fiqh perspective, a person could get up and do every single action that you see in salah, and then he calls it yoga, or he calls it exercise, or he calls it meditation. That's not salah, it's not accepted from him. You understand? Likewise, a person could go into a shower and shower himself from head to toe, touch everything. He has no intention to do ghusl. That's not a ghusl for him. So the niyyah, especially for the Malikis, it's necessary for everything that is mumayyazun min al-adat or mumayyazun bayn al-ibadatayn, is an action that you necessarily need to separate from adat, like customary actions, right? Like you don't like, for example, when you eat food, right? You don't need a niyyah to eat food to make it halal for you. You understand? That's why things that are adat, for example, when you break your fast, you don't have to have the intention from a sharia perspective to break the fast because it's an adat. It's something that is customary to the human being, right? Likewise, when if there's, it's like urine on your clothes, right, and you need to take it off, you don't need to have an intention to do that. The simple act of doing it suffices it. But things that you need to do tamyiz, you need to do distinction between the two acts of worship, and you need to do tamyiz between the act of worship and what is a customary act. Those things are what require intention. You understand? Because ghusl has specific steps. It's not an ada, even though it has elements of an ada in it. So therefore, you need an intention to do it. Does that make sense? Likewise, salah. Salah, you need to distinguish it from the external salah, which is other motions that you're doing for the purposes of other than worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're sitting down, you're laying down, whatever the case might be. So the intention is the shart, it's the condition, it's the first condition, لسائر العمل, for the rest of the amal. Does that make sense? For the rest of the amal. Now, and the intention, it depends. In certain actions, they require specific intention at the outset of the act, such as, praying, such as performing wudu, such as doing ghusl, such as fasting. Other things, even though they are not an ada, but because of the nature of how they're given, you don't have to have a sweeping intention, just a general intention. For example, I have the intention that I'm going to give zakat. I don't need to, at the moment when I click send on my zakat, to say I'm sending this for the purpose of zakat. The general intention suffices for that. And even in the acts that need a specific intention at their outset, the intention doesn't have to be worded. The intention doesn't have to be expansive. The intention just has to be mafhum or maqsood li'amalin ba'daha, for the action that's after it. The intention has to be understood by you that, okay, I'm going to make wudu. I don't have to say I'm about to make wudu for the purpose of praying this salat. No. The act of you getting up and knowing that you're going to go make that for the purpose of either removing hadith from you or for the purpose of making the salah halal for you, that's enough for the intention. But ala kulli hal, everything is according to your intention. And even beyond acts of worship, al-umuru bi maqasidiha, that affairs are according to what you are aiming by them. You can have two actions, one of them is completely fasid, and one of them is praiseworthy. And all that differentiates them is their action, is their intention, right? It's a shartun. There can be other shurut in a particular thing. I'll give you an example. A person can't find a random woman and say, okay, I'm making the intention that I'm having legal fornication with this woman, right? That's a shart in the marriage. But the other shurut are that he has to be married to her. The other shurut have to be that she has to not be on her period. You understand? That's another shart, right? So the niyyah is just one shart, lisa'il al-amal, for the rest of the amal. But there might be other shurut that are muhadarah, that are also present along with the niyyah. For example, when we talk about the salah, the first shart is the intention. But you also have the shart, you have the shurutul wujub and shurutul siha. You have the shurut that relate to the action being wajib. You have to be a Muslim. You have to be a baligh, meaning that you've reached the age of distinction, puberty, and having sound intellect. The time of the prayer has to come in. You have the shuruh siha, right, which is that you have to be in a state of wudu. You have to be, your awrah has to be covered. You have to face the qibla. The time of the prayer has to come in, right? Ala kulli hal, there can be other shurut that are next to uh, that are next to uh, that are next to the niyyah. Does that make sense? But ala kulli hal is the niyyah that makes the rest of the amal either sound or fasid. If an action requires a niyyah and the niyyah is not sound or the niyyah is not present, and then that action is not counted, right? And if there's an action that it only the niyyah distinguishes it being between it being good or bad, then that action must have the proper niyyah attached to it in its proper place. A person can kill a person and he's on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he is implementing the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the legal retribution that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described for certain punishments. And nothing happens to him, he even gets a reward for that. And another person kills a person and he's killed as well because he's murdering the person, right? He has distinct intentions, right? Another person can kill someone and it's accidental and they don't apply the had of execution for him. And another person can kill a person and it's unintentional, and he just has to pay the diya and pay and if you can't pay the diya, then free a slave or fast 2 consecutive months, right? It could be the same action. One could intend to kill by a punch, the other intends to kill by the other punches a person, but he doesn't intend to kill thereby. So that's why he says, وَالنِّيَّةُ شَرْطٌ لِسَائِرِ الْعَمَلِ. He says the intention is a condition for the remainder of an amal, of a particular action to do for the purpose of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some way, shape, or form, or for the purpose of an action that the Sharia has stipulated upon you. Biha salahu, by virtue of that niyyah, he says, it can either be sound, wal fasad, or it can be corrupt, lil amal, for the rest of the deed. You understand? Now, the next thing he says, الدين مبني على المصالح في جلبها والدرء للقبائح. He says that the religion, likewise, these are what's known as maqasid as well. These are al-maqasid al-kubra, khams. The maqasid al-kubra are 5. The 5 main aims of the religion are 5 things, right? It's to protect a person's religion itself so that you don't go to the hellfire, that you're not worshiping idols, that you're not worshiping people. It's to protect a person's wealth so that your wealth is not stolen, it's not damaged, it's not taken away from you. It's to protect a person's intellect so that your intellect is not corrupted through intoxicants, through going crazy, whatever the case might be. Understand? It's to protect a person's lineage so that people know who they are, that there's family, because a family function is what allows communities to function. And to protect the person's arad, or his erd, I should say, meaning his honor and his body itself, right? That these are the maqasid al-kubra of the deen. There's other maqasid as well, but these are the main ones. That's why he says ad-deenu mabniyun ala al-masalih. He says that the deen is founded upon, it's built upon masalih, benefits, fi jalbiha, as far as benefits that is bringing in. You understand? وَالدَّرْءِ لِلْقَبَائِحِ, and to shut out all the doors for filth and undesirable things. Everything that the religion brings to a person has at least one maslaha, and if not countless masalih. The salah, for example. When you pray salah, what do you have? You have tibul nafs. You have your soul becomes purified. It feels good, right? When you pray salah, you get reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. When you pray salah in the masjid, for example, the deen stipulating that people pray in the masjid, yes, there's a reward for you, but what does it do? It brings the heart closer. The Prophet ﷺ indicating to us that when we pray, let there be no spaces between the feet and the shoulders. Why? Because he says the shaitan comes through. It doesn't mean that shaitan physically stands there, although that's a haqiqah, it's waqi. You can take that waqi interpretation. But the majazi, the figurative import, is that when people pray apart, what happens is that they begin to build cliques. You have one clique that prays on the east side of the masjid, another clique that plays on the west side of the masjid, another clique that plays on the south side of the masjid, and they begin to have separation in themselves. The elite will pray here, the non-elite will pray there, the blacks will pray here, the non-blacks will pray there. But the deen put a maslaha in place by stipulating that when you pray, not only do you pray in congregation, but when you pray in congregation, let you be close to each other and the best of you be at the forefront, meaning rush towards being at the forefront. Why? Because you won't have any distinction between your hearts. You won't see that I'm better than this person, so he can't pray next to me, right? So there's a maslaha, your hearts come together. So that's why he's saying ad-dinu mabniyun ala al-masalih, that the religion is based upon jalb al-masalih. Jalb al-masalih is to bring benefits to the human being and to bring benefits to the community. And there's endless, the prohibition of alcohol, the prohibition of zina. All we have to look is societies where that's been compromised. If we go, for example, to the black community in North America or in the UK or anywhere where there's large black populations in the Western Hemisphere, the flood of drugs into those communities resulted in what? The breakdown of the family structure. Why was it more? Why was it easier for those communities to be impacted by that? Because the lower thing is already halal to them in their view. You understand? So if they're not stopping at the lower thing, which is alcohol, because crack is worse than alcohol, heroin is worse than alcohol, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ban the lower thing. You know, for example, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا zina. He says, don't approach zina. Meaning, if you can't even approach it, then how can you commit it? If it's not permissible to approach zina, it's not permissible to perform zina. Likewise, if alcohol is not permissible, then what happens is that things that are worse than alcohol, as far as their intoxication, they're also haram as well. So that avenue, that's what's called darul qaba'ih. It closes the doors for filth to come in. That's a repellent of something that's evil. The same thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits zina. If you look at a society where zina is common, sub-Saharan Africa below the Congo is pretty much all Christian, right? And so they don't look at, although they should, they don't look at fornication in the way that they should, right? As being haram. So what happens is when whatever forces cause AIDS to come, whether it's natural, whether it was planted, whatever your theory is, it's spread easily because they're fornicating. So what you'll see today is that the rates of AIDS in sub-Saharan African countries that are not Muslim, they go all the way up to 30, 35%. You have some countries like Botswana, Swaziland, South Africa, Lesotho. Those places, their AIDS rate is 30%, 40%, 35%. But when you go to places like Senegal, when you go to places like Somalia, when you go to places like Libya, the AIDS rate is 1% or lower, right? So these are things that people, they try to ignore it, but it comes from the deans having masalih, you know, and repelling all types of mafasid. Anything that's corrupt, the religion repels it. You understand? So everything in the religion is like that. That's why the Sheikh, he brings this qaida forward. He says, فَإِن تَزَاحَمْ عَدَدُ الْمَصَالِحِ يُقَدِّمُ الْأَعْلَى مِنَ الْمَصَالِحِ. He says, if two or more, a number of benefits collide, right? Meaning if a situation or an action or a particular circumstance has the choices of multiple benefits, عدد المصالح. It's not just one benefit. He says, يُقَدِّمُ الْأَعْلَى مِنَ الْمَصَالِحِ. Then what you would do is you would prioritize the loftiest or the most beneficial of those benefits, right? So for example, let's see, the day of Thursday comes, right? This is a simple example. The day of Thursday comes. You know, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ on Thursday is to fast, right? And so you can read Quran any other day, but you say, you know what? I want to read a bunch of Quran today, whereas you could you could fast the day of Thursday. It would be better for you to prioritize fasting the day of Thursday because those are both masalih. You could fast and you'll get that reward, or you could read Quran because that's a general thing that you could get the reward for. But because this day has a specificity to it, or this time has a specificity to it, then that has greater reward in that particular time than anything else. You understand? Or likewise, you could have two actions. They both contain more benefit than the other. Right? So you have a choice between building an orphanage for 1,000 Muslim children, right? Or you have a choice between educating, 50 children. You understand? You have the money for both, but one will bring about more good, and you can do both. But you can only do one in the place of both. It's tazahama. That's why it says tazahama. They collide, meaning that they take up the same space. Zaham is to have tightness in a space, right? So if you only can do one of them in that space, then you take the one that has the most benefit, right? So you have to be efficient in what you do with respect to seeking benefit. He says, well, but it's opposite. تزاحم المفاسد أو تزاحم المفاسد. You understand? أو تزاحم المفاسد يرتكب الأدنى من المفاسد. He said, but if the opposite happens when multiple mafasid are occurring in a tight space, right? That there's a possibility for multiple mafasid to occur. Like one of them, bila shak, one of them has to occur, right? He says, يرتكب الأدنى من المفاسد. Then you sequence them in the order of the lowest mafasid, meaning that you take the one that has the least amount of harm to people. It's like a utilitarian perspective. The least amount of harm that you can do, just do that one. So a common example that people use is a person, he smokes marijuana, but in order to quit marijuana, he wants to listen to music. He's like, oh, when I listen to music, I don't feel like smoking weed. Let the guy listen to music, because it'd be better for him to listen to music than him to smoke. Because one is disliked to being haram, and the other is absolutely haram, and it'll destroy his intellect. Another example: a person masturbates to avoid fornicating. Masturbation is haram, bila shak, right? But fornication is worse. The nusus on fornication are clear, and there's a hadith that's attached to fornication. There's a punishment that's attached to fornication. So therefore, you would tell him, I guess you'd have to masturbate. That's going to keep you from fornicating, right? It's an undesirable situation. But if one mafsad is going to occur, you understand? If at least a single, corruption is going to occur, it has to occur. Then take the mafsad that is less. You understand? Take the mafsad that is less. This is why they say this tied to another qawaid, which is ad-darurat tubihul mahdhurat, that necessity this necessity makes things that are normally haram halal. But he'll get into that in just a few abiyat, in just a few lines. He says, ومن قواعد الشريعة التيسير في كل أمر نابه تأثير. He says it is from the principles of Sharia في كل أمر نابه تأثير. It's from the Qawaid of the Sharia, it's from the principles of the Sharia that you prioritize ease في كل أمر نابه تأثير, in every affair whose opposite or whose alternative would be difficulty. You understand? Whatever is going to be difficult for a person to do, then the Sharia allows for you to make it easy for a person, right? The common example is, for example, a person, we learned in Al-Akhdari the other day, that if you normally you should sit, so you should stand when you pray without leaning on anything. If you can't stand without leaning, then lean on something. If you can't stand while leaning, then sit down without leaning on anything. If you can't sit without leaning, then sit down while leaning on something. If you can't do even that, then lay down, right? And so forth and so forth and so forth. So the deen prioritizes ease. Whatever's alternative would be difficulty, hardship, then the deen allows for ease, right? He says, وَلَيْسَ وَاجِبٌ بِلَا اقْتِدَارٍ, and that goes to the example that we're just showing. وَلَا مُحَرَّمٌ مَعَ اضْطِرَارٍ. He says there's no obligation without the capacity to perform that obligation, either due to an inherent lack of capacity, right? Or because of the circumstances. Does that make sense? Some people, it's time, the Asr prayer is about to end, and there's people that are coming to shoot. They're about to kill you. You can't even perform the fear prayer. You have to run. When you're in a safe place, then you make up the prayer. You understand? وَلَا مُحَرَّمٌ مَعَ اضْطِرَارٍ. And there's no such thing as a haram in the case of a darura. Like I said, الضرورة تبيح المحظورات. الضرورات تبيح المحظورات. That excuses and hardships, they necessitate and they make that which would normally be mahdur, that which would normally be haram. And the Quran makes that plain, that if you have nothing to eat, you can eat pork. Just don't transgress, as the Quran says. Right? If you have nothing to eat and there's only carrion, you can eat carrion. And so forth and so forth and so forth, right? He says, وَلَكِنْ وَكُلُّ مَحْذُورٍ مَعَ الضَّرُورَةِ. He says, everything that is haram, that the Sharia allows because of a darura, he says, بِقَدْرِ مَا تَحْتَاجُهُ الضَّرُورَةِ. You understand? بِقَدْرِ مَا تَحْتَاجُهُ الضَّرُورَةِ is only to the extent that the necessity requires for it. It's only allowed to the extent that the necessity requires for it. So the Sharia says that if you're hungry and you have nothing, absolutely nothing to eat, you can eat a pig. It doesn't tell you start breeding pigs and have a pig farm so that tomorrow, if it happens again, you can eat pigs. That's the ghulu. And you can grow pigs, you can grow cows, right? Likewise, the Sharia will tell you that if a person gets to a point, one of the companions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they asked them, "What do we do if somebody comes to try to take our property? Then defend it. Then what if he tries to harm you? Then defend yourself and kill him. So what if he kills me? Then know that you're a shaheed. What if I kill him? Then know that he's in hellfire. Like, you know what I'm saying? So the Sharia is telling you defend yourself to the point that's necessary. So if a person is coming to attack you, you feel unsafe, and you have the capacity to let off a warning shot in the air, or if you have a capacity to shout at him, "Hey, low bro, listen, I'm armed." He doesn't listen. You shoot in the air. You shoot in the air, and he doesn't listen. And he doesn't listen. He keeps coming because khawf al-Muslim, as we learn in Akhdari, is haram. You understand? So shouting at him and shooting in the air normally it would be haram because you're causing a Muslim to feel fear. He doesn't come. So you point at him. Still khawf al-Muslim. He's still coming. So don't shoot him in the head the first time. Shoot him in his foot. Stop him in his tracks. Right? That's what he means by بقدر ما تحتاجه الضرورة, to the degree that the darura needs in order for you to get rid of the darura. If he's still coming, then if he wants to take your life, you have to kill him. Right? The Sharia gives you that right. Right? But normally killing a person, shooting him, harming him, making him feel fear, all of these things are haram. But it's a darura that you need, and it's a darura that has come. So the Sharia makes it mubah for you to do it, and then moreover, it tells you to do it to the degree that you need to get rid of the darura, but don't transgress. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like the transgressors. Jazakumullah khair, ikhwan. We'll end it here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ونحن رأيناه وأنت رأيتنا وبذلك طب نفسا وكن متجملا وإن تشاء كن معجلا وإن تشاء كن متعجلا.